These people are going to get tired of seeing my face, Al. I've been on here for an hour. You're
Well,
you're
I
the
haven't
featured.
I haven't seen it at all, so I'm good to go with you here, Nathaniel. Thanks for having me.
Everyone, welcome to hour two of night two of Connected 2025. And We're going to pivot from what we just discussed, which was really about the patient visit, but all things that go along with that. And we touched some upon the importance of the psychological aspects of that visit, but not really digging into it more. And um, our subject matter today is writing a new story with TED. And we're going to talk about TED, which is a chronic rare disease and the psychological manifestations of this. And a shared feature that we're going to focus on is this sense of powerlessness when diagnosed and suffering, and talk about ways that we might flip the script to one of personal agency and meaning. So that's like an overview of everything. I'm going to introduce myself again for people who didn't maybe chime in for the first half, and then I'm going to have Al introduce himself. My name is Nathaniel Jellinek. I am a TED patient. I'm a physician. I've had TED now for 3+ years. So in some ways, I'm a newbie, and in some ways, I've been around the block a few times. In that 3-year window, I've had three uh, flares of the disease, actually, like one worse than the next each time. The most recent being August, September of this year. Um, and I'm struck by how important the mindset and the psychological manifestations of this disease are. For me personally, it was a small part the physical changes, which have reversed to some degree. There was a lot of disability for me with double vision and inability to work as a physician. And there was the chronic disease aspect of it, which didn't have an end to it, that it's not a linear disease for a lot of us. And so the unknown about how to deal with that and how to live my life with that has been actually quite hard. So I'm eager to talk about that with Dr. Freedman. So with that as a basis, Dr. Al Freedman, could you please introduce yourself and please tell us some about your personal history, because you come at what we're going to be talking about today with sort of a unique background.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Good evening to you all, wherever you may be. And it's great to see you again, Nathaniel. And I appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with you tonight. And I appreciate your community's trust in me to support your efforts with your program. My name is Al. I'm coming to you live from picturesque Northbrook, Illinois, north of Chicago. Um, I am a practicing psychologist, and I specialize in supporting the needs of patients and families affected by rare disease, at this point all over the world. Um, I provide counseling services to individuals, patients, and to family members of affected families. 42 states in this country now I'm able to practice because of change in the licensure rules for psychologists. So uh, I'm, I'm able to help people now in a way that I wasn't before the pandemic. I'm from Philadelphia and was limited to one state. So my ability to specialize and to serve communities like yours and individuals within communities like yours has completely changed. I also work with groups and facilitate probably about 10 or 12 support groups a month for different organizations like yours, people facing challenges. And I consult with organizations like yours, rare disease advocacy organizations, in support of programs and building programs to support the mental health needs and the psychosocial needs of the families that you serve. And finally, I'm working with industry. Thankfully, these conditions now have drawn the interest of industry partners I think a couple of which are supporting your conference and support you. That's how I met you here in Chicago, Nathaniel, at a meeting.
Hmm.
And so I provide consultation to biotech companies and pharmaceutical companies as they're doing the best they can to enter rare disease communities and connect with the patients and families they serve and to help them develop programs that support the needs of all of us. I say all of
Mm.
us. I say all of us. Nathaniel, thank you for um, prompting me to speak of my personal experience because although
Hmm.
having a PhD in counseling psychology is helpful, I had a son named Jack who was born um, in 1995, and he was born healthy. But at a 6 month checkup with the pediatrician, the doctor noticed that baby Jack wasn't sitting up and rolling over. Um, 4 days later, we found ourselves in an office with a pediatric neurologist in Philadelphia, and we learned that baby Jack was diagnosed that was affected by a neuromuscular disease called SMA, or spinal muscular atrophy, at the time an untreatable and incurable disease. And baby Jack, was given 1 year to live at that
Mm.
time. Um, that day was Friday, 30 years ago, November 7th, 1995. Our family's life flipped upside down. We had a healthy baby at the beginning of that week, or what we thought was a healthy baby when we began that week. And by the end of that week, we had a baby who was not expected to live to his second birthday. So you can imagine the uh, emotional toll that took on me and his
Mm.
mom and my family. Um, Thankfully, baby Jack didn't fully cooperate with his prognosis. He was with us for not 1 year, but 26 years. And I was very, very lucky to be his dad for so long. And it was a long journey and a challenging journey, as Jack had many medical needs and a wheelchair and a ventilator and a feeding tube and nurses in and out of the house and 350 nights in the pediatric intensive care unit over 26 years. Um, so it wasn't easy, but the boy taught me a lot about what it means to be a parent and taught me a lot about the difference between what's important and what's not important. And these days, most importantly, he taught me what I needed to know to support other patients and families affected by rare disease, which is what's led me to be here tonight and what's led me to my
Mm.
work. So it's especially um, it's a bittersweet anniversary, that 30 years since
Mhm.
diagnosis, but it's very meaningful as well. And Jack's still kind of on dad's shoulder here, keeping him honest every day. And I feel very privileged to take what I've learned from my son and share it through my professional world and my professional work. So that's who I am, and that's why I'm here. And I feel very blessed to be able to help other people um, in spite of the challenges, the very real challenges that came with the condition that my son was affected by. I also have a
Yeah.
daughter. Just one last comment. I don't want to forget my daughter. I'm a dad who has two kids, and uh, Kara, or my daughter, joined our family as an infant, who came from Korea as an adoptee when Jack was 5 years old. And we had a recessive gene disorder in the family, so we decided to adopt a baby. And baby Kara is now all grown up, and she's 25 years old. And I'm proud to tell you that she is working full time at NORD, the National Organization of Rare Disorders, in the patient registry area, in the research area. She's been there for 3 years. And I kind of thought she'd run as far away from all this as she could, because growing up with Jack wasn't easy, but she took a step in. This is a low tech old photograph of Kara riding on the back of her brother's wheelchair. And she's all grown up now and working full time at Nord. Sorry for the low tech here, but this is uh, my son, Jack, who had that smile on his face his whole life from beginning to end. And he it's kind of like being the dad of the mayor of our town. He brought the best out in everybody. So
Mm.
wasn't easy,
I mean,
but
I think,
I think we got a
yeah,
lot to talk about, Nathaniel, and I'm happy to be here.
yeah. I mean, I think that picture of Jack was his smile. Boy, that's something, Jack had SMA. very difficult, obviously, disease. You talked about it.
Yes.
Um, for this community, when if we're sort of narrowing it down to people with TED, we don't usually have that smile on our face. I mean,
Hmm.
I think there's a real sense of self-consciousness that goes along with it, a
Hmm.
sense of powerlessness, which is sort of unique, I think, to autoimmune disease because there's this feeling like you're hurting yourself. It's not cancer, the outside thing that you're fighting. It's yourself. You're like, my body's doing this to me. How did I get
Hmm.
this? So there isn't a quick battle to overcome, and there isn't a clear even endpoint. And so I think a lot of us get uh, stuck in that framework
Yeah.
of, and when you must see this with some of your patients, are there off the top things that you suggest to people when they do feel stuck in their own sense of
Yeah.
powerlessness?
Oh, thank you, Nathaniel. I was very lucky to have a boy who was so positive and so
Mm-hmm.
happy
Yeah.
every day. There was a whole lot packed into what you just said, and I'd like to respond to as a dad and as a professional. Um, uh, First, it's the different types of conditions and how they manifest themselves in rare uh, cover a wide range. And um, as a psychologist, I can tell you that people who have conditions that are less obvious to other people. I mean, when Jack drove his wheelchair in the room, everybody could see he had a problem and he
Yeah.
was different, right? So there was no hiding that. Um, I find in my work that people with conditions that are less visible to other people have a different set of challenges because
Mm.
other people can't see that there's a problem. And oftentimes people need to explain to even their own families to try to, or doctors or friends, that there is a problem and
Mm.
what it is. And it's a complicated experience emotionally to be in that situation. So just
Mm.
wanted to first make that point about a visible condition versus an invisible condition. Um,
Right.
in terms of people's psychological adaptation to rare disease that
Mm.
I see, um, I can tell you from my own experience that it began with trauma. The life that we thought we were going to have with our baby wasn't the life ahead of us 30 years ago Friday. That's bam.
Right.
There was like our family before that day and then after that day. And they were two entirely different experiences. Uh, Entirely different. Like a fault line. Before
Yeah.
diagnosis, after diagnosis. And immediately after diagnosis, and sometimes diagnoses take years in some conditions. For us, it was a week or a few days, but it's a
Right.
traumatic thing. It's a disorienting and confusing experience to find yourself with a medical condition that you haven't heard of before, that others
Mm.
haven't heard of before, that most doctors haven't heard of before,
Right.
and that doesn't have a solution. It's a problem without a solution. So that, for me, it was like being blasted into the twilight zone where nobody else was
Right.
but us, isolating, scary, disorienting, and without grounding and without direction. Um, that's the first thing I experienced and what I see with patients who have relatively new diagnosis. And then
Mm-hmm.
a period of time passes, and generally most of us get our feet under us. And then we reorient to that new universe that we're spinning around in. And then we find ourselves dealing with the reality of uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
What will the future hold for me? What will the future hold for our family? What what does this mean? Why me? Where do I fit into the world as I'm
Right.
finding my way? um, I'm interacting with rare disease communities all over the world, and no matter where I go and who I meet, no matter what the condition is, the the experience of uncertainty cuts across all rare diseases, all cultures, all countries. I just returned from Cyprus. There were people from 17 countries with a rare disease there, and physicians, and they're all talking about the same stuff,
Mm.
adjusting, the uncertainty, and then how do you find your way from a place of uncertainty to a place of hope? And most of us find our way there,
Yeah.
not necessarily in a linear way. It's often a recursive, it's often two steps ahead and a step back, but we generally find our way. But some of us get stuck, and it's understandable why. To answer your question, stuck, because we find ourselves in a universe we didn't choose, didn't plan for, and we continue to face uncertain future. And it's a hard way to live when you don't know what the future will hold. That's how I needed to live for all those 26 years. You don't forget when they tell you
Mm.
your baby's going to live a year. That's kind of following you like a cloud wherever you go.
Yeah.
We never knew when baby Jack caught a cold, or uh, were we going to be in the hospital for a week or a month, or was it going to be nothing, or could we lose him? Each and every time something
Mm.
came up, that cloud reared itself, showed itself, and
Mhm.
that uncertainty went right through our hearts. So uncertainty is a hard way to live, and it's understandable why people um, have a difficult time sustaining their emotional energy and
Yeah.
forward thinking and living when living in limbo. Um, so I'll pause here. There's plenty more to talk about, but
Yeah.
we'll just start.
Yeah. I mean, there is this phenomenon of you, humans are tend to be fairly resilient, and you do get used to a lot.
Yes.
Things that seem intolerable at first, you fast forward a couple of months and you're like, okay, I'm sort of used to this now.
Yeah.
But the uncertainty of it, Christine talks about this a lot, which is that the shared feature, as you mentioned, is that everyone is fearful that the disease is going to come back, that you get used to your new level of normalcy.
Right.
And you might not be happy about it, but you've sort of adjusted. But there is this cloud, as you mentioned, that hangs over everything. I mean, I'm feeling it now as we talk about it, you know,
Mhm.
um, and it comes and it goes, but it is always there. And um, I have days where I'm better and worse at sort of being positive in spite of that, or somehow seeing a blue sky instead of a gray sky.
Mhm.
Um, are, do you have suggestions for those of us who get stuck in that gray zone and sort of trying to adjust, and how we cope?
Well, I have a few. First, what you're doing now, um, being a community, where do you find hope when you're feeling stuck or you're newly diagnosed? You find hope. I found hope from other people who
Yeah.
faced the same challenges that I was embarking on. And within our community, I found people who, to me, became very quickly instant heroes, because they had the same news about their child,
Mhm.
or their parents had the news about them, and they managed to find meaning and purpose in the experience despite all the challenges, and move forward with their lives with great dignity and grace. And to me, these people were heroes. Even the parents who lost their babies, as I
Mhm.
expected to, and they were still walking and talking and chewing gum at the same time and showing up to our conference and helping out. I was like, wow, if they can walk and talk and chew gum, maybe I'll be able to when I lose my baby,
Mhm.
right? And maybe I can help in some way. Um, so you find hope in role models. Uh, there are adults with my son's condition who wrote letters in our newsletter, inspiring us, telling us their stories, telling us what their parents were told, and um, became friends. and became beacons of light to me. So you find hope in people who've been there, and then you find your community of people. It's a club we don't choose to join. None of us do, but
That's for sure.
there's
Yeah.
there's there's strength in numbers, and that's why I love the support groups I work with, because uh, I find so much power in the strength in numbers in a community when patients and caregivers come together and they lift each other up and lean on each other and share their stories, their knowledge, their experience, their perspective, their worries, they become very close. You know, in my community, my Cure SMA community, it's like another family to me.
Mm,
So, so there's that's one answer to your question is sticking with the people who have this unusual experience in common and being lifted up by those people and the way they can role model how to do it when we're not sure how to do it.
right.
Examples. A second answer to your question is, as a psychologist, I can tell you that the people who are affected by rare disease and family members who are able to um, live healthy lives at an emotional level, their mental health is solid, are people who don't allow the rare disease to become their identity and be consumed by it. People who are able to find meaning and purpose and move forward and thrive generally have activities outside of the activity of being a patient or a caregiver. They have jobs, professions, skill sets, hobbies, interests, relationships, activities that are unrelated to the condition. Although the condition may limit a person's ability to fully participate in the things that they want to or used to, when
Mm,
people stay with things that, like when you get a rare disease diagnosis, you don't lose your identity as a person with a skill set or knowledge or professional experience or relationships. You're still that person. You're that person with a rare
mm,
disease. So I think it's really important for everyone to take a break from the rare disease when you can and to do other things. Those 26 years were really hard and very complicated because we couldn't leave Jack alone for a second. But when I was able to run my 4 or 5 miles every other day, I was in much
mm,
better shape than when I didn't. When I went,
mm,
from Philly, I'm a sports fan, so mild-mannered Dr. Al will be at the Eagles game next Sunday in Philadelphia. That's my therapy. Um,
mm,
I like to joke, by the way, that as a psychologist, I feel job security just walking through the parking lot at the Eagles home games when you see that crowd. But that's kind of my therapy, right? People play music, listen to music, read books, write books, have all kinds of hobbies and collect things and go places. So when you can do those other things and your disease doesn't intrude on your ability to do those other things, it's really important to do those other things. That's what I see as a professional, help people become unstuck or prevent them from getting stuck in the first place. It takes time,
mm,
it takes practice, it takes adaptation, it takes creativity, because sometimes we can't do things the same way. And I couldn't for all those years either, a lot of the time. So it's easier said than done, but it's
mm,
possible and it's important to make that a priority.
mm. I think today it's probably easier to find a community because if we back up to when you first got the news with
Mhm.
Jack, the internet wasn't a thing, or if it was
No.
so immature that no one was using it the way we use it now. So it's much, I mean, I remember when my wife basically signed me up for TED community support group, that this is something that you should check out. And here's the time and the place to
Mhm.
go. So I wasn't able to do it myself, which I think it gets to that part of this that when one does feel powerlessness, I'm not even using the tools that are out there to access the support for myself. um, I'm also aware now of just sort of the other side of that and how that not every resource online is going to be a positive one. But that's just true of life. We got
Yeah.
to, figure out the ones that are reputable from the ones that aren't. Um, and that leads me into this related point, which is, for me, I don't know if I would have found TED Community without my wife. I mean, she really gently pushed me to do that. And I was open to hearing it, but I'm very aware of how important the immediate support system is. And I'm also aware of the toll that a disease like this can take on my immediate support system, you know? And so you've done it both ways. You oversee people who see all this, but you also were the support system for Jack's whole life. Do you have some advice for us on how we as patients deal with our support system, how we can nurture them the best way, but also depend on them because we do?
Well, again, let me just one comment on 30 years, a quick story. Now I'm going to get to support system. When Jack was first diagnosed and I called back to the kind woman who answered my 800
Mm.
number call, there was no internet yet. There was no, I'm not a, there was a group, but it was an 800 number someone gave me. And this
Yeah.
mom answered the phone and she was so kind. And she said, "You're not alone. Your baby's a gift and we'll always be here for you."
Mm.
I always remember that call 30 years ago. And Audrey's still
Yeah.
my friend. But the second call I made,
Mm.
I need to tell you this because it's funny. The second call I made, I said, "Audrey, the doctors say I can't do anything for Jack. What could I do to help you and help
Mm.
others?" I was trying to figure out how to use my energy to do something. And so she said, I'll never forget it. She said, "Al, do you know what a website is? Somebody told me we should have a website." It was 1995. So I was the first. So I had learned how to hand code HTML and showed up to my first conference with those plastic overhead transparencies and put them on a projector and said, "Your website's, here's what a website is, and here's your 5-page website." And my buddy pushed a button and turned it on. So yeah, I'm affirming your point about things
Yeah.
have developed a lot in the past 30 years.
Right.
Um, Support system. So you start with your nuclear family and your marital relationship, your partnerships. It's really important to acknowledge that a rare disease diagnosis is, although the doctor has a chart with one patient's name on it, the family receives the diagnosis, not only the patient.
Mhm. Mm.
The a lot of ripples where the stone hits the water, and unfortunately, that level is not attended to by the healthcare system in the same way that patients, because of the way the economy of healthcare works, and
Yeah.
what's reimbursable, what can you
Right.
charge for, right? So
Right.
um, support systems need to stay healthy by not overworking, by taking time away. So mom and dad or husband and wife need to go to the movies any way they can, or whatever activity that they're able to do together and enjoy together, even
Mhm.
if it's only 2 hours. Um,
Mm.
that's a prescription Dr. Al offers to couples all the time. Um, Siblings need to have their own lives outside of being the brother or sister of a patient with a rare disease, which is again why I'm so proud of my daughter for not disappearing from rare disease and working in rare
Right.
disease. That was not easy to be Jack's sister.
Yeah.
But the best thing I did for her, my daughter, was to make sure to give her my time too, even though it was near impossible to do it, to get her to her
Mhm.
soccer games. And she was the captain of the softball tennis team. She was a
Mhm.
softball pitcher. And in the chorus, she needed to have her own space away from all this.
Yeah.
um, but just as the patient, him or herself, needs to maintain their identity as a person, um, unrelated to the disease, a person affected by the disease, but not the identity as the disease. The family too needs to be able to carry on individually and collectively as best they can in order to maintain their energy and sustain forward movement with everyone's lives as a family, collectively and also individually. Um,
Mm.
and the last point I'll make, and I go on about this one, is um, you can't do it by yourselves sometimes. Sometimes you can, and sometimes you can't. My son's condition was unusual, and he needed a lot of intense care. And at the time of his passing, we had 10 or 12 different nurses taking turns on 12-hour shifts
Mm.
helping us take care of him.
Mm.
We wouldn't have been able to, he would not have lived to 26, and our family wouldn't have been able to sustain itself and have him at home without help from others. That's an extreme case. 4 different nursing agencies and 10 nurses. Uh, After he had a tracheotomy when he was 20 years old, we had to have somebody there with us as much as we could. Um, but there are gradations of this, and my point is that if if uncle or aunt or brother or sister or grandpa or friend or nurse or whoever it is can help be a kind of support person or a troop in the army to help with a child, um, it strengthens the support system. The support systems collapse when they're overburdened, just like anything can collapse when it's
That's
overburdened.
right.
So we have to allow ourselves to accept help. And it's not easy to do that because I wanted to, I didn't want to give away my job as a parent, taking care of my son. I wanted to
Right.
be a responsible dad and do it myself. That's our instinct, is to take care of our family ourselves. So sometimes people feel like they failed in some way if they aren't able to do that. But I actually think of my clients as success stories when they're willing to trust others to join their family and to support their family and to allow others to support them so that their support system can be sustained.
Mm. I think there's it's a very sort of American independent spirit that runs. I see it in my patients a lot. I see it myself a lot, where I want to grit it out and get through it
Yeah,
because
right.
I'm I'm tough. I can do that, and that has not served me well when I do that. And it, I know that for me in the background, I am trying to protect my support, even though my supports want to help me. Um, it's almost like I'm afraid to bring them into this mess, hot mess that is me at different times. And so for me, that has been a challenge is asking for help. And it's almost like when I ask for help, I'm saying what a hot mess I am. And if I don't ask for it, it's just inside me, you know?
That's right.
And
Hmm.
and I can deny it or I can just deal with it. But for me, I know that it builds, it
It builds.
builds
That's
and
right.
builds. And you can sort of push it down. There's some country song where you push it down and it comes out sideways. If you keep
That's right.
pushing it down, like
That's
it
right.
doesn't go away.
That's
Um,
right. It doesn't go away. No, no,
and
no. I
so,
no.
but I do see it too in this community where people, it's like they get exposed to a TED community group and their eyes widen and they can't believe that there's a community out there that actually gets what they're going through because for the past X number of months or years, they've just been dealing with it internally. So I think
Yeah.
that sort of self-reliance and independent spirit, which is laudable maybe for some things, doesn't help us with this condition. So I really
No,
like what you said
no,
about getting
no.
your team involved.
Isolation doesn't help us.
Mm.
Connectedness help us. The words right behind you on your background, connected, 2025. We are all very connected in rare disease. People lift each other up, and connection is what we need. Isolation leads to hopelessness and leads to depression. Connectedness lifts people up. And Um, and I think it goes beyond that. Everywhere I go, everybody's nice to each other. When I was at a conference last weekend in Kansas City. Everybody was just lifting each other up. Our
Hmm.
country's full of conflict and divisiveness and people separating each from each other. And I don't know, in rare disease, I see the opposite. Not only
Yeah.
that need to connect, but I just see everybody is kind and everyone understands the difference between what's a big deal and what's a small deal in life, and people lift each other up, connected
Mm.
strongly and lifting each other up. Fights isolation, very important. That's true for us to connect with our communities within rare disease, but it's also true, I think, for us to stay connected as we can with our school communities, our neighborhood communities, our faith communities, our work communities. Connection really helps. Connection helps us. Isolation hurts us.
Do you have recommendations on um, wellness, mindfulness things that can help? Because I think I agree. Finding a community, opening oneself to a community, um, participating in a community. These are really powerful themes that we've talked about. And then there's the 22 hours of the day or 20 hours a day when you're alone or doing something else. And during that times, I know I can be my own worst enemy. Um, and do you recommend whether it's mindfulness or journaling or therapy or um, spirituality, however, what suggestions do you have for us when we are alone and we're not in that community moment?
My suggestion is that because everybody's different, everyone benefits from different types of approaches to staying well.
Mm-hmm.
That what I encourage people to do is to explore what works for that person, what works for you, what fills your cup.
Mm-hmm.
For some people, it's all the things you just mentioned: meditation,
Mm-hmm.
journaling,
Mm-hmm.
therapy, the group stuff, spirituality. For other people, too much quiet doesn't help. There's some people who say to me, Dr. Al, yeah, that meditation exercise was interesting and cool, but when it gets too quiet, then my mind goes, there's too much space for me to fill with stuff that
Yeah.
doesn't help me, right? So for some people, being busy and occupied in other ways is more helpful to them. For some
Mm-hmm.
people, it's playing music or listening to music, reading books or writing, hobbies. For me, the Eagles game on Sunday will be therapeutic, as I mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
which is the opposite of meditation. So like, and some people benefit from a variety of things. I do, and I think most people benefit from some quiet time and some busy time, some time
Mm-hmm.
being occupied and connected with other people and busy, so that they don't have time to think too much about the things that burden them. And other people need the silence and benefit from the silence in order to get grounded and to calm their minds.
Mm-hmm.
My first job, Nathaniel, was a third grade teacher in a Quaker school back in Pennsylvania. And the way that this was unfamiliar to me as a guy who grew up in a Jewish family, I found myself in a Quaker meeting house with 8-year-olds with an elementary school full of kids in silence. Quakers worship in silence. Basically, it's group meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned a lot. I've spent many years as an educator in the Quaker schools and discovered the value of silence for myself. Um, Not necessarily in the religious sense, in a meditative
Right.
sense and spiritual sense. Um, the silence can have great value, but some people, I was uncomfortable as a 22-year-old third grade teacher. At first, I didn't know what to do with the silence. I was
Mm-hmm.
unfamiliar with it, right? And there were 8-year-olds squirming around, and I was responsible for their behavior too. So it was actually anxiety provoking. But as the years passed and I got the hang of what silence could do for me, it really had and continues to have great benefit. Everybody's
Mm-hmm.
different is the point, and I don't think there's a one size fits all. Those 8-year-olds learn to read different using different methods. My therapy patients benefit from a variety of methods. And I think people benefit from a variety of approaches to help them stay well. And as a professional, I learned my job was to have a range of tricks up my sleeve and offer
Mm,
whatever that person and whatever that child needed in order to be successful in
mhm,
school or to be able to grow in the therapy work that I do now. So
mm,
it's everybody's different, and it's
yeah.
important to honor that, but it's also important to be intentional to identify what does help and to then allocate time intentionally to make it a priority to do the things that keep us healthy, I think is the greatest challenge in this busy life many of us have.
That's a really, I think, important point, right? You actually you have to take the step to help yourself. And I think one of the problems when one has a depressed mood is it's harder to motivate to get out to do the thing that you know that's going to be helpful for you. Um, uh, my own experience with that is just that having a good support system is the key to overcoming the inertia there.
That's right.
Um, to be
That's
able
right.
to do that, because it can be very isolating if it's just you alone and then you're stuck
That's
in
right.
the muck.
That's right.
But yeah, but you're right. It's you have to actually get up and do it,
You
and then
gotta,
that
yeah, yeah.
it varies a lot.
Sorry, sorry to interrupt.
No, please.
The important piece here is the important concept is active versus passive. When people have depression, um, when you have depression, you're low energy and low motivation,
Yeah,
which then can lead to low activity and passivity. So people who are depressed, the worst thing that most people who are depressed can do is to give into it with passivity. As a
right.
practitioner, I always encourage my clients to fight against depression actively by doing
Yeah.
actively something, whatever that something is that can help them push out of it rather than give into it. So active versus passive is a very important concept in terms of mental health in general. And
Mm,
in terms of depression and mental health with rare disease, one of the things that's sometimes overlooked, Nathaniel, is that there are people who have a predisposition to anxiety or depression unrelated to the rare disease. And
right.
so there's just as the general population has a percentage of people, like anything else, you can be genetically vulnerable to blank, blank, or blank. Depression,
Hmm.
anxiety, uh, unfortunately, there are people who have a predisposition, and would have without a rare disease. Rare disease certainly doesn't help, but
Right.
it's more than occasionally I encounter a client whose therapist overlooked the fact that they had a vulnerability to anxiety or depression because the therapist was distracted by the unusual rare disease and
Right.
understandably assumed that 100% of that person's struggle was because of a rare disease. Right?
Right.
So, especially a visible rare disease, when a
Yeah.
therapist looks at a kid like mine or an adult with a wheelchair or ventilator, well, of course that
Hmm.
person is under stress. Of course, when you have a rare disease, you have strain and
Right.
stress. But sometimes there are two problems that 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 are two problems, not one problem. Rare disease can produce symptoms of depression and anxiety for all kinds of obvious reasons, but it's not the only source of those symptoms in some cases.
Right. Right. That's a really also another important point. Um, Al, we're getting a message that we should transition our discussion to involve the Q&A that has been
Mm-hmm.
going on in the background. And I know I wanted to introduce the audience to Josh Rancourt, who has been curating that. Josh, are you able to help guide us? And I think there were a number of chat comments too that you're probably privy to, Josh. If those
Yes.
need to be brought to the forefront, please do that too. But, oh,
Yeah, of course. So, thank you for this opportunity and for the community. And I think there are kind of groups of questions here that went along a lot with the discussion that you both had. And I think it's important to show, as Dr. Al mentioned, that people are at different points in their journey. And
Right.
and some of it involves the patients in the community here, some with their support system as well. So I'll try to group them a little bit in kind of similar areas. A couple of them deal with early on the diagnosis, that, you know, a lot of times patients may feel lonely because of TED. I think what Dr. Al said about patients with a disease rather than the disease defining a patient, but it's hard in the beginning to not have that define you as a person. So patients that may feel lonely, some that lose a sense of self and self-confidence, what are, Dr. Al, maybe some good suggestions? I know you've mentioned some for how to deal with that at that time.
Thank you, Josh. It's a pleasure to meet you too tonight. The needs of patients who are newly diagnosed with a rare disease, I find, are unique. My needs were unique when my baby was diagnosed. That twilight zone feeling is very powerful, takes time, and sometimes the kinds of common sense ideas that I could suggest just aren't available to a person because they're still too traumatized and disoriented from the adjustment in their lives. So my first response to that question is give yourself time, because when you get launched into the twilight zone, it takes some time to reorient. It took me weeks, if not longer, to reorient. Second, don't allow yourself to be alone for extended periods of time if you can avoid it. Stick with the people who you trust and who care about you and love you so that they can show you that they continue to love you and care about you, even though you now have a rare disease. And third, get connected if you can with others in the community who have been in the community longer and have been able to find their way from that place of fear to a more hopeful place. I like to, when I give talks to large groups, I say my journey has been from a place of fear to a place of hope and ultimately to a place of love. That was a 30-year journey. It didn't happen fast. It didn't happen fast. Fear to hope takes time, but hope breeds hope. So by spending time with people who are hopeful around you, whether or not they have TED, and who can help lift you up and remind you of the person you are and continue to be, who they care about and love, will only help you. If a person, the last thing I'll say about this is that if a person feels stuck and depressed for an extended period of time to the point at which the symptoms are so intrusive that it interferes with day-to-day functioning. People ask me all the time, Dr. Al, when should I come for professional consultation? Do I need you? The answer to that question, what I'm listening for, is disruption in day-to-day functioning. When a person doesn't have an appetite, isn't sleeping, is crying all the time, fearful that something else bad could happen. This was me in those first weeks after Jack was diagnosed. These are normal psychological responses to an acute set of stressors. I needed to talk to a counselor, and I was a counselor. I was just coming out of grad school, newly minted PhD psychologist, and I needed one. Don't be ashamed to ask for help if your symptoms are intrusive enough that they're derailing your day-to-day functioning. And a professional in that kind of situation can be very helpful. Was to me, and that's now I'm the professional helping others. So it gives you a little range of ideas there, Josh. I hope that helps to respond to the cluster of questions.
Thank you. Very helpful. And we have some more. I just want to mention, I know there's more questions in the chat than we can get to on this live event, but the panelists are going to get these in the organization and get answers and be able to post those as well for those
Sure.
that we're not able to get to.
I'd be happy to help.
Yeah, this next one, Nathaniel, I think may be good for you. I think both of the doctors could answer this, but this goes a little bit towards, with TED, there are symptoms that are very visible that can be seen, and then there are other effects of the disease too. And I think Dr. Al, you talked about this a little bit, but Nathaniel, being a patient living with TED, for some patients, it is the very visual thing that people see that can make them feel different, make them feel strange, that's what others notice about them all the time, and it's embarrassing, and that can make them want to hide from others.
Yeah.
Any advice on that type of experience, and some solutions or some ways to manage with that?
That is a uniquely sinister part of this condition. Uh, Depending on one's presentation, it might be the first thing people see when they see us with TED, and it might be more in the background. But for a lot of us, at least in our minds, it's the most significant thing you think about when you're with another person is, what are they thinking about me? So it's a very important question. And there isn't a one right answer. Tying into what we talked about before, there's a real comfort level in being with folks who have the same condition you have. And while most of us don't have that community in person, we do have it virtually. And that's been very helpful for me at my worst, and to basically be able to lose the embarrassment because I'm with people who understand and get where I'm at because they have it too. But I think people have done different things and you just deal with it. So for instance, a lot of us wear sunglasses a lot, and you just deal with the comments of people like, what's with the shades, dude? It's like, whatever, but at least then they're dealing with the shades and I don't have to talk to them about my TED. Um, uh, so there's sort of tricks like that. But I think the important part is to not isolate. I found that at my lowest points, I don't leave the house as much. A lot of us don't look in the mirror, don't have pictures taken, don't go out. And finding excuses to go out. I've been inspired by talking to Christine, who basically said she was going to live her life no matter what and didn't care about it. And we could all take some of the confidence that Christine has and put it in our own lives. That would be great. So I think we do our best. We surround ourselves with a community that's very supportive and try to not isolate.
Right. I'll try to squeeze one more question in here. After these questions, there is a brief 2-minute video before the 30-minute after party. So please, for those online, stick through that for the one after too. But
Josh Weaven
so
told me you can have 5 extra minutes.
Excellent.
If
Then
we
we may
have
be
enough
able to get
questions,
through.
we can have 5 extra minutes. Yeah.
Right. So we may be able to get through both of these, and they come from, I think, different spectrums or areas of support system with patients. So maybe we can start with Dr. Al, and then also get your input as well, Nathaniel, on it. So on one end of the spectrum, as a patient, how can they better communicate with their support system what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, because it's new to their support system as well, and they may not feel as though they're being understood or heard as well. And then the other side of the spectrum is a question about how some of your support system may want to protect you more than you want to be. For example, whether it be with decisions on a therapy that your support system may be afraid of, or a
Mm.
clinical trial, or that sort of thing. So I think it comes from love from your support system, but kind of both sides of that. Maybe Dr. Al, you could speak about that first for a little
Well,
bit.
there's a lot packed in there, Josh. I think what the thread that runs through both of those types of scenarios is open communication. The the remedy, the solution. It's easy to say, hard to do, but open communication. So,
Mm.
to dovetail on the last question about your discomfort about people's confusion about what you look like and discomfort about being out. I always remember 30 years ago a social worker telling me that people are going to be freaked out when they hear about our baby's rare disease diagnosis. And when hear something that's so scary and unusual, they don't know what to do. And so when they don't know what to do, they don't do anything. And
Mm.
and the social worker kind of pulled me aside and said, Al, you want to do what you can to communicate openly about Jack's situation because you don't want to be more isolated than you're already going to feel. And
Mm.
people don't want to do the wrong thing. So they won't do anything. So they don't take the risk of saying the wrong thing. That's the reason for
Mm.
it. People are well intentioned. that um, that conversation precipitated open communication from me, Jack's mom, an old school one-page letter, and again before a lot of internet with
Mm.
stamps on envelopes. This is this is what this is the sad news we've learned about our son's medical condition. This is what it's called. This is where you can learn more about it. This is how you can support the other families who find themselves in the same boat we are. And here's how you can help us by just treating us the way I always have. And just don't come to our house when you're sick because you could get our baby sick. But by giving people directions, instruction, guidance, educating them, and openly communicating and modeling that I was comfortable enough to send that letter, despite how horrified we all were, that gave people a direction on how to respond to that news. That's a form of open communication. And that was very important in the beginning of our journey. That journey continues. And in terms of support system, that letter went to our family and friends, people who cared about us the most and people who we cared about the most. We wanted them to stay with us and not be afraid to approach us, not be afraid to say or do the wrong thing. So I define that support system. There's a circle around you that's tight, and then the layers out. That open communication within your immediate support system is crucial, whether it's your your extended family, your immediate family, your partner, your spouse, your child. The more that you can be openly communicating, the better. And when you have a rare disease, things get busy real fast. You have all these appointments, you have all these medical symptoms. It's like my joke is, yeah, in all your free time,
Mm.
whatever it is, in all your free time. That's the way it was for me all those years. Again, it's about intentionality. If you allocate the time, sit down. Sometimes families have a little Sunday evening 30-minute family meeting or
Mm.
caregiver meeting, partner meeting. Just like set aside time with intention. The way I talked about setting aside time for your hobbies, your interests, your movie, your date night. You set aside time to talk with each other. Then it doesn't build up the way you talked about it before, Nathaniel, things building up. And then there are fewer misunderstandings. There's more openness. And these problems stay small instead of getting big. When things don't go well and there isn't this type of communication, things pile up. And then I get a call. People don't call Dr. Al when things are going well. They call me when things aren't going well, right? So they haven't attended to their isolation or depression, or haven't attended to these relationships within their family. Sometimes they buy my time to have that family meeting with me and practice, and then I set them loose to do it themselves. Right?
Mm.
But the more you can do this proactively, the less you have to react to. Kind of easier said than done, but open communication where runs through both of those scenarios.
Great. And Nathaniel,
Yeah, I
your
mean
experience with this?
yeah, that it's I'm learning from Dr. Al as we talk. I like the theme of open communication, and I also appreciate acknowledging that it's easier said than done, both because it can feel, I don't always want to share my disease, like, but it works better when you do. It's and some of that might just be me, but open communication seems to help most situations. And I think Al's point of that people want to do the right thing and say the right thing for the most part, that if we can get everyone on the same page, things will work better. And that has certainly been true with me, with especially in my workplace, being very open. And again, I'm a fairly private person. It's not like I want to share this with everyone at work, but things go much better when they get why I am the way I am right now. So I appreciate the open communication. For time, Josh, is it okay if we start to wrap it up now?
Yeah, I think we can wrap that up. I think we've touched on most of those, and then, as we mentioned, we'll still make sure that the other ones are addressed.
Okay. I want to thank you, Josh, for really sort of sensitively putting together a group of Q&As into something that allowed us to have a conversation about it. That was beautifully done. Thank you very much. And enormous thanks to Al. I think Al is a national treasure. And I got a free therapy session out of it today. So I'm the big winner here. But I think we're just really grateful to have your insights on all the important psychological aspects that we talked about today. And the one I thought about this the first time we talked, and I'm gonna think about it again, and I hope other people do too, but this theme of fear to hope to love. And I mean, you said it took you decades, it's a work in progress, but if that's out there and possible, boy, that's pretty great and something for all of us to process and think about and work on. So with that, I think we're going to wrap it up.